Welcome to this episode of the Psychedelic Mom podcast. This is part 2 of a 2-part series that I did with a medicine woman, curandera, and mother named Ana Medina. So if you haven't listened to the first part of this series, that was released last week, and I highly recommend you start there. You'll hear about Ana's rich history, how she works with clients, what brought her to the earth medicine path, and we dive into what shadow is and how she works with her clients to heal some of their deep wounds. We dive deeper in this conversation into the medicine that Ana serves, which is bufo, toad medicine. And coincidentally, I am just returning myself to coming back from a 4-day retreat that I was hosting. Bufo, toad medicine, is a particular medicine that I also serve. So I had the opportunity this weekend to work with a small group serving earth medicines, and this medicine was one of them. And every time I return and have the gift of working with earth medicines, I am continually reminded of the profundity of these medicines. And in particular, I want to highlight a couple things about bufo. One is that in this episode, we interchangeably talk, we call it toad, bufo, and 5-MeO-DMT. 5-MeO-DMT is the molecule in the bufo alvarius toad venom. And so that's where this medicine comes from. And there's also a synthetic version. It's indigenous to our bodies, which I find fascinating. And it's working on many different receptors in our brain. And there are so many different experiences with this medicine, and we talk about those during this episode. Ana actually was one of the medicine women that served me bufo about a year ago. So we talk about what my experience was like and how she works with clients. A couple things I want to talk about is how quickly this medicine comes on. It comes on in 10 seconds. And it can be an experience journey that is from 10 minutes to 45 minutes. And in that time, you go beyond time and space. You go beyond your biology, your ego, and your conscious awareness. So this is a huge experience. Some people say it's one of the most powerful psychedelics on the planet. And what I saw this weekend is that, again, there are so many different experiences, from near-death to death experience to rebirth experience to merging with what some people call God, love, universal energy. And so I got to experience once again this weekend all of those things. And Ana's going to really dive into more of who she is in this conversation and how she works with clients. And we also get into the Colorado law right now, trying to legalize these medicines and what's happening there. So enjoy this episode with Ana, and I want to get to know my listeners better. So I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear which shows are really resonating with you, what you'd like to hear more of, so that I can be of better service in this space. So reach out and let me know, and enjoy this episode with Ana Medina. So the other thing that I find interesting about this medicine in particular is the somatic release. So I've had definitely different experiences. The experience of completely laying back and being just transported to the light immediately. But I've also had experience of really understanding that I am somatically releasing intergenerational and generational trauma. And in particular in the experience with you, and I've been working for a little bit through my medicine work, and similar to you, by the time I was with you, I had done much of my shadow work and had been through the medicine path and really done my own work. But it was interesting because you held such beautiful space, and you have a unique way of doing it. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you hold space for this beautiful medicine?
Thank you. Yeah. I think it started when I was working with ayahuasca and started supporting the ceremonies. I never poured that medicine, but I did support the ceremonies. And I felt like there was a divine mother energy coming through me and with me for that space. And when when I had my experience with bufo, that strengthened. I felt like the Divine Mother wants to hold space in a very feminine way with this masculine medicine, because it is very masculine. It can shoot you up to the stratosphere. But if we as practitioners balance that with the Divine Mother energy, it becomes like this really beautiful, well balanced experience. So on my drive from Santa Fe to Durango that day, what I saw is really honoring this temple that we have, where our soul lives. And when we really honor it and give it a place and celebrate it and prepare our soul ahead of time for this experience, then you could have a beautiful experience. But whatever needs to happen. Part of it is somatic release, whatever needs to happen. So, one of the things that I do, as you saw, is we do a foot wash. And, what I tell people is that how would you prepare for the most important day of your life? If you're going to go meet your soul, you're going to potentially go meet the moment in which we went from oneness to this individual soul having this expression of the divine on this planet through this body. Like if you could see that, because that's what bufo has showed me again and again. It has taken me to this spark, that moment where we go from oneness, boom, to like all of a sudden there's a me. And then it takes me back to the oneness and then back to that moment. And the moment that there's a choice moment. There's like a spark where you choose a path, and then it kind of showed me like all the things that happen down that path, and you become this woman born in Mexico, like all of this. And then you go back, and then like there's another possibility. The spark shows you a different possibility. And maybe I could have been, someone in Africa, deep in the jungle there. Or, anyway, for me, that spark moment is to be celebrated. Like, wow, what an honor to take a medicine that could take me to the moment of creation. And the divine selves that we are, and have me feel the divine love. So when I experienced that in that drive, it was like, oh, the honor that comes with serving this medicine. Like I am holding space for people to potentially go and see who they truly are. I mean, there isn't a bigger honor on the planet than to have people experience that and you be able to witness it. Like to me, this is like, oh my God, I get to do this. Like the reverence that I have for that moment. So that's what comes through when I hold that space. It's like, there's such honor in like offering you this sacrament that comes from my country, that comes from my people, that will help you go remember who you are. It's like, oh, wow.
Yeah. And also the soul, and also for some people possibly experiencing unconditional love for the first time in their lives, and a coming home to self that like their mind and conscious mind couldn't even comprehend. It's a cellular level of coming home to the deepest aspects of self. And also I would say too, like not only meeting one's own soul, and that's probably also what you're talking about, but it's becoming one with that expansive life force that is the, whatever you want to call it, God, all, spirit.
Right. It's more than becoming one, it's knowing. It's experiencing that we are one.
Exactly.
And it's like, let me show you who you really are. You are actually not separate. This "we are one" thing is not just for the songs from the Unity Church thing.
It's not a t-shirt.
The New Age. Right. It's not a t-shirt. This is like for real. And let me just show you and take you there.
Let me have you experience it. Leave you without words to even describe it. And tell you to go live that in the world.
Right. Now go integrate
go do that
for the rest of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it is beautiful medicine. What a beautiful path. It's such an honor to be able to work with it. It's no joke to carry medicine. It's a big responsibility.
Yeah, so when I met you, I was on this path. I'd been on this path for a while and had started to do some serving of medicine in legal places and been on this path for a while. had done a lot of my own deep shadow work. And it was interesting, that experience with you, because it was so somatic. And I was in this process of, I had a dream that I was going to be going into the cosmic feminine wound on the planet. And that was my dream the night before. And it's kind of interesting because my first psychedelic experience, I don't remember saying it, but the medicine woman said to me, you said in your experience, I'm a sexual healer. Now, when she told me, I found that was like really strange. I wasn't into this kind of stuff. I was like, I don't even know what that means. Why would I have ever said anything like that? But as my journeys continued, I realized that there was a lot of sexual trauma within my lineage. And it was dark. It was dark to go in and see some of that. And so it was interesting how before I had that experience with you, I had a dream the night before that there was a continuation of healing kind of that line. And that I was going into the cosmic feminine wound that was female suppression, that was sexual objectification and sexual trauma, and that I would be rebirthed through this process. So you did the beautiful foot bath, which again is just the cleansing and purity and of coming in and getting ready for this experience. And then in that experience, it was so fascinating because our bodies know so well how to heal. And so I remember coming back from the experience and going into the cosmic wound and knowing that that's what I was experiencing in this journey. And what you talked about before, the polarity, that it's all beautiful and it's all love and there's this wound. And coming back, I was like tapping on my womb space. I remember when you were there and I was kind of tapping on like my ovaries and my womb space as I came back. And I remember too that there was music playing and how beautifully held that space was. And as my mind came back online and had thoughts come, the gift was no thought, just feel, just feel. And that love in that space and knowing that this is such deep, deep work. And so, I just want to honor the fact that you hold space that this work is happening in, that someone trusts enough to allow these deep things to move through. The other thing that was interesting in that space is you had a support person that was male. And I've never been served medicine by a male before. And I was very aware of him in the space. And such a kind, safe soul. And it was so interesting to have a masculine, kind of an integrated masculine energy within the space. And I remember that was something else that stood out to me, the beauty in that setting, that we had the river rushing by, the fire that was tended to the whole time. It was so beautiful. So, from my heart, from my deepest soul, thank you so much for holding the space the way you did and holding this medicine the way you do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, have you done or served your son's medicine?
Yeah, what a beautiful question. The son that asked me at 17 if we would sit with ayahuasca when he was 23, he came over when we were in my little house in South Boulder, and I did not serve him, but I was there assisting the ceremony, and I remember that being one of the most beautiful nights of my life. There's my son doing his beautiful work, and he went very deep the second night, and I remember sitting in my little spot. I had this little spot by the steps where I assisted from, and I was really tuning in to the Divine Mother energy and the Divine Mother holding me and me allowing the Divine Mother through me to hold space for all these people, and then me as an actual mother to this child right there doing his work. It was so many layers at the same time.
Wow.
And then the song that came on was Mother's Blessing by Snatam Kaur. beautiful song that is also in Spanish. I mean, everything about that ceremony was like, I could not believe this was happening.
And what was the medicine?
That was ayahuasca.
Yeah, ayahuasca. Wow.
And then here, once I moved up to the cabin, I did serve that same son, Bufo, with some of his friends that came up, and we did a little ceremony. And it's been incredibly special to be able to share the medicine with my kids and to watch them learn how to take the sacraments with a lot of reverence and ceremony, and to really know that these are very special. And my son said, you know what, I'm still integrating that stuff. Like, I'm done for now. Yeah. And it's really beautiful. It's really beautiful. And my other son is, he has experienced some medicine on his own. But, you know, he's really tending to his mental health in a beautiful, beautiful way. So he's cautious, which I think is really beautiful. They're really very self-aware. Yeah.
How would you say that your medicine journey has changed you as a mother?
Oh, my goodness. Completely 100%.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, my kids throughout this past 10 years have said to me, like, oh, my goodness, I cannot believe your shift and your change, and we can talk to you differently, and we can have these beautiful conversations, and, you know, you're not attached to how we do things, or every time I see them, even this past Christmas when I was there visiting my son and we all got together at his house, you know, he's like, you're just so much more enjoyable to be around. Like, we can play now. We play music together and we could communicate. And we've gone through it because they've had to do their healing work from trauma that I created for them. Yeah, I think the first 10 or 15 ayahuasca ceremonies, I would call them afterwards and say, I'm so sorry what I did to you. I see it all now. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. And eventually one of them said, we get it. It's okay. Your healing is our healing. We're good. You don't have to keep apologizing.
I love that. Oh my gosh. So tell me a little bit about your wisdom school.
Thank you. It's called the Mystery School, New Paradigm Mystery School. Yeah. And, you know, like I said earlier, it got created from 5 different women coming to me in 5 weeks in a row saying, you know, I want to work with you. I want to learn from you. I want to hold space with you. Some version of that. And then when I sat with the mushrooms, it was New Paradigm Mystery School. And I was like, okay. And I have the archetype, the teacher archetype, big time. I have the mother and the teacher archetype. And I learn through teaching. It's my learning modality is teaching. And so I put myself in situations where I start teaching something that I don't really know that well because I trust that the space is going to create the wisdom. It's not me. And so this is what this was. I got together with them and I said, okay, what do you guys want? What do you want to learn? Let's just create it together. And we did. One of them said, you know, I really want to have a baby. So, and, you know, pregnancy is 9 months. So let's have a 9-month mystery school. I'm like, okay, 9 months. Wrote it down, 9 months. What do you want to learn? So we created it like that and had a beautiful 9 months together in which we really tried to live in the new paradigm. And then some things did not work out as well as I thought they would because we're not yet in the new paradigm.
Right.
I was trying to rush to be in the new paradigm.
So what was one of those things?
Oh, it was really funny. One of those things was like, we call it the first year, we call it New Paradigm Now Mystery School.
I like it.
Now it's called New Paradigm Mystery School, not now because it kind of didn't work out. But one of those things I said, you know what, let's live in the new paradigm. Go home and look at where the value meets affordability for you, and that's your tuition. Like, you come up with a price. And I'm just going to trust that it will work out because things work out. And I confuse the heck out of people. People are like, no, you need to tell me how much I don't know how to do this. What do you mean you want me to come up with a tuition? I'm like, yeah, we're not in the new paradigm yet. Damn. Right. Okay, let's back up. So that was one of the things. I thought the tuition could create itself from, because, you know, an herbalist that works for minimum wage or the yoga teacher is going to be different from the one that has a corporate job. And I thought in the new paradigm, the paradigm that I have in my mind, that's kind of how it works.
Right. Because all those jobs are equally valuable.
Right.
Although our society puts different numbers on them.
Right. We happen to live in a capitalism that, doesn't create equality for people. So the other thing is I kind of thought that the curriculum would kind of create itself. And we could just be in flow, because it was all women the first year. And I thought, with women's intuition, we'll just intuit when we need to come together and when we need to take a break. And then I realized some women really needed structure.
Yeah.
And some women really needed more spaciousness. And some women really needed to know what we were going to do that day. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's a little too visionary.
I'd be good with flow.
Yes. Yeah. But I had a lot of things to teach, because I really thought, okay, if you're going to be holding space, let's talk about power dynamics and the nervous system, and let's talk about trauma, and let's talk about, connecting with the directions, and how do you create your own relationship with the directions and not culturally appropriate other people. I mean, there are so many things that were flooding to be like, okay, we need to do this. And the second year, once I had my partner, she brings a whole other thing. Her curriculum is called Play Attention, which is finding a way to find our own impulse and where the impulse comes from. And we do a lot of theater games. And some people are like, why are we doing this? And then we do a ceremony together, and that material shows up. Like, oh, I noticed that my impulse comes from here. And if you're going to be holding ceremony with mushrooms or with MDMA and you don't know where your impulse comes from, you really need to become a clear channel, and also know where those impulses come from, and also know power dynamics, and also know, there's so many things. So we did create a curriculum, and it now is an 8-month program. Is 7 immersions from Thursday through Sunday in an 8-month period. So structure showed up.
And so is that full right now? If somebody wanted to join that, how would they go about joining that?
Yeah, it's newparadigmmysteryschool.com online. And the next one starts next May. We're taking this year off because my partner did have a baby. That was her intention, is to have a baby. And she did have a baby, and Beautiful. She's a little distracted at the moment. And my goal this year, I got a message this year from the medicine to deepen in my indigenous wisdom and my indigenous roots. So I go to Argentina next week. And so I'm focusing on that to bring more depth and richness to the mystery school. So we're taking this year off. But it's already on the website, the dates for next year. It starts in May. So we're not full yet, because we've just been making these decisions as far as dates. So there's plenty of space for people to join. Yeah.
So what would you say if this is a big question, but the wisdom that you've gained from medicine, if you had to distill it in some of the greatest teachings that you've received from medicine, what would they be?
You did warn me that it was a big question. I mean, from bufo, that we really truly are the divine, and that sounds really big and out there for people, but I got to experience that. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Once you feel that, you can't unfeel it. From ayahuasca, I think my connection to the earth as not really separate. I looked up a definition the other day for another podcast that I'm going to be interviewed in, and we were talking about indigenous wisdom versus Western wisdom, and I looked up the definition of nature. And the Western definition of nature is everything out there except for humans. And the indigenous definition of nature is we are all, nature is our kin.
Yes.
And so one of the teachings from ayahuasca is, no joke, I am part of nature, like really.
That is our mother.
Right.
We are nature. I think that's fascinating. I remember reading that the Western culture had taken, like, we sit outside of nature.
Which is partly why we are in the wounding that we are at. And that's why the medicines right now are showing back up saying, whoa, people, you got way far away from home here. Let's bring you back, and you need to ingest me, and you need to feel that you are part of this, because otherwise, we're not going to survive if we see ourselves as separate from our mother. Like, it's basic stuff. The attachment to our mother, that's attachment wounding. The attachment to our very mother, we have broken. And we live in this society. I call it the vending machine society, and I think it's happening in the medicine world. People, put a coin in, you get your candy, and you're done. You run away, and people are treating the medicine like that. Oh, I want to go to a ceremony and do my thing and do my work, and then leave and be done. And then there's another. Yeah, post it on Facebook, and then another ceremony comes the next week, and then you go again, and people are like ceremony happy. And that's vending machine culture. It's like, no. Let's slow it down, people. Stop doing so many ceremonies. Do one. Go do your integration work. Honor this medicine. This is not for us to go consume and consume and consume. These are plants that come from the jungle that people have to harvest in the middle of the jungle in the heat and grow over years and years and years. This is a precious thing. Take it one time. Go integrate. And then when it calls you again, you go again. Someone told me the other day that in LA, in any given weekend, there's 400 ayahuasca ceremonies.
I've heard the same thing, yeah.
And I thought, and how many integration circles?
One a month. Yeah.
So we need to slow this whole ship down.
Yeah, we do. And
we need to stop treating it like a vending machine. And
well, the other thing, too, is like we need these medicines for future generations.
Right.
I mean, this is a gift that they have emerged the way they have, and the fact that they have made their way to Western culture, but we don't want to be Westernizing them. The very disease and the dis-ease that is created by Western culture and big pharma seems to be putting itself into the psychedelic earth medicine space, which is concerning.
That is very well put. And that I was talking to somebody about this the other day too, that very thing. You take psilocybin mushrooms, which are the mycelial network connected to all of the earth underneath us. It's connected to everything.
It's everything.
And
it's all there.
You're going to take the psilocybin out of it, separate it from its own mother, put it in a capsule.
Artificialize it, perhaps. Who knows?
And then have people do a ceremony inside 4 white walls for them to wake up and do their healing. It's like...
Even the idea of putting it in pill form. Right. That alone is just odd when you think about, like, you think pill is for sickness, and the way big pharma big pharma operates for profit alone. And you think, how in the world, even I saw people celebrating that Colorado and Oregon, are decriminalizing and legal. And I said, it's so interesting. Have we forgotten that this was our sovereign right? Are we so far from the truth that the fact that these grow in our backyards, and it's always been our sovereign right, but suddenly, like 1 or 2 states suddenly give us the right back and a smidge of it in their container of what is going to be legal or not legal, and we all celebrate. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it is crazy, because on the one hand we celebrate that people will not go to jail. So that is to be celebrated. People will not go to jail from using these medicines. And on the other hand, the way it's being done is commercializing and capitalizing on these medicines and colonizing them. So
exactly.
It's a polarity. I have a meeting at my house next Friday with the people that voted for Proposition 122 and the people that voted against. And I'm going to try to bring some peace and harmony to the community here in Colorado that is a little bit fractured.
Well, I don't mean to say we're not moving forward by decriminalizing. I do not mean to say that, actually, and to say like legalizing these medicines isn't a forward motion. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm against that. It's just that it's the belief that it's already our sovereign right.
Right. Well, yeah, it is. It is totally our sovereign right. And, they got, they got classified as class 1 drugs.
Exactly.
It was a huge war on drugs. They got taken away from us, and now they're kind of sort of being given back to us, but in a very colonized way. And, like Einstein said, we cannot solve a problem with the same mentality that created it. And guess what? We are trying to solve the problem of our wounding, even our trauma, with
in a Western
taking
model.
this in a Western model, medicalizing our medicine. And the wounding came from our separation from the mother. We cannot heal it by separating these plants from their natural states.
Yeah, I was just reading the other day that Australia just became the first country to look at psychedelics as medicines, and that they're going to be able to get MDMA and psilocybin from their doctors and pills. And I'm thinking to myself, and again, it's like when you have the gift to, first of all, do this work with medicine and understand it deeply, and then have the reverence and gift to serve somebody medicine, and you see actually what it takes, where it takes people, the actual integration that it actually takes to work through once you've opened all of these parts of self. And I'm thinking, how in the world would anybody gain anything from going home, taking MDMA on their own, not having community, not having somebody who's well-versed in all of the modalities that support this deep excavation and healing of self? It doesn't make sense to me.
No, it doesn't make sense to me either. Medicalizing everything it is going to be dangerous. I think we're playing with fire, and I think we're going to get burnt.
Yeah. So I'm curious about your spirituality. I'm curious where your spirituality was prior to medicine and where you would say you are today.
Wow. I haven't been asked that question in a while. I was lucky enough to grow up in a very Catholic country with a mother that did not believe in organized religion. And so she would tell us, Jesus is pure love, and don't tell anybody tell you otherwise. And so we did not believe in the mea culpa and somebody died for my sins, and we just didn't believe that. So that was a gift. So many people are recovering from, those ideas, those very close-minded ideas of organized religion. So I didn't have to deal with that. My mom would energize water with her hand and then put the water on. So she used a lot of energy. So that was the beginning of my experience with, we are energy, was through my mom, actually. And then when I moved to LA, I was invited to a meeting from a spiritual community from a professor, actually. A philosophy professor invited me to something, and it just felt very aligned, and it was called the Emissaries of Divine Light. I don't know to what extent they're around anymore, but it was a beautiful spiritual community, and I started going every Sunday to the services, and it was very metaphysical, very, very metaphysical. We are one, and we're here as expressions of the divine. So in my 20s, that was a lot of my experience, was that. And then when I met my husband and we got married and moved to Virginia, we tried to continue on that path, but there really wasn't a group in the East Coast. There was a group for a little while, but then we had kids, and then we just veered away from that. And then my husband was climbing the corporate ladder, and I kept trying to find my path. We were not really in the spiritual community where I really felt at home. If I had stayed on that path, I think I wouldn't have gotten so far away. But moving from LA to Virginia was like moving from the Earth to Mars. I mean, I was like, where am I? It was I had more culture shock from LA to Virginia than I did from Mexico to LA.
That says a lot.
Yeah. And so I got a little bit far away from that, but there was always something burning inside me. Like like, I know I need to explore a lot more of this. But then, you get busy with motherhood and the kids become the most important thing. And eventually, I did convince my husband to go to church, and we found a Unitarian Universalist church where you don't talk about God really, but you talk about the interconnected web of life. So it was something. Mm-hmm. And we did that for a few years because it was, it was enough of a community that served our purpose, but it wasn't like churchy. It wasn't too churchy, which was great for him. And we did that for a few years. And then I wanted more spirituality, more like connection to the divine. And the Unitarians don't say the divine. Mm-hmm. They're very politically correct. So then I found a Unity Church. Mm-hmm. And the Unity Church is a Christian church with a very metaphysical view. And again, we are the divine, we are God. And there was beautiful messages there. So, and that was towards the end of our marriage when I switched to I think we went together to Unity for a little while. But they do talk about God and they do talk about Christ. And I think it was a little much for him. Mm-hmm. I understood it because they were talking about it from a very metaphysical perspective. Mm-hmm. But, a lot of people get turned off by just that. Mm-hmm. So that was really beautiful for me to be part of that church. And one of my children really enjoyed the youth group in that church. And it really brought him a lot closer to his own spirituality. And so when I got divorced, I actually moved to Hawaii for a little while to do some of my healing. And then when I came back, I think I don't go to church anymore. I don't go to the Unity Church because I'm just not into the organized part of that. Mm-hmm. So what are my beliefs? I mean, Bufo has shown me that we really, truly are one. I also have this understanding as I get, more white hairs in my head, that we did choose to be in these bodies. Mm-hmm. And so our expression of the divine is not through opening all the upper chakras and being out there in a meditative state all the time. It's like grounding ourselves and bringing that back to the mother and connecting with nature in that way. So, I don't really like a lot of the spiritual bypassing. I know I did a lot of it when I was part of Unity. There's just a very easy way to get all those concepts and the perfect spiritual words to say to bypass a lot of feelings. But now that I'm doing this work with medicine and I've worked with ayahuasca and I've worked with the mushrooms, I like to be real as heck.
Yeah, there's no bypassing.
No. Let's look at the real human feelings,
conditions
that we have, right, and deal with it here. And yes, we are the divine.
Yes.
And yes, we are headed home, but we cannot bypass this body, and the trauma lives in this body. So, I don't know if that's just my beliefs or my spirituality or the two together, but yeah, I'm like,
I agree. I agree. Yeah. I think one of the things that medicine does is the masks come down. Mm-hmm. All the enculturation has to be peeled away. All the false beliefs start to fade away. All the parts of self that were the protector parts that had a role, that all the parts that were false, all of it starts to fade away until you're standing there layer by layer, unmasked. And sometimes I think maybe what medicine space does, because you're in an altered state, you become unmasked in that altered state, coming in contact sometimes with emotions you never even knew you had, content that you never maybe even remembered. You're unmasked in that altered state. And sometimes I think it's part of bringing that forward. It's like, how do I now stand in what's true? How do I not go back to my enculturations that don't really serve me anymore? And that is a spiritual journey. That is the hero's journey. That is the aspect of going deep into the the self to heal for whatever reason, whether it's karma, whether it's agreements that you made prior to get here. There's a lot of different ways that people frame it. But it seems to me that, yes, it's so beautiful to meditate and meet that unitive state and go back into that toad experience, because it's right there all the time. You know, that veil is so thin to be able to just go right back into that space. But you can't stay there, because that's the bypass. It's like dealing with what's true so that you can live in relationship with another from the truth of who you are. And
and there's something about the relationship with another. I heard a beautiful analogy, I think by Dr. Sue, that she calls it the bus stop conversations. And the medicine has helped me like really understand this analogy, which is, imagine that we're a bunch of souls over there on the bus stop to come to Earth. And we start asking each other, so why are you coming down? And one soul says, well, I really need to learn forgiveness, because last time, like, I didn't learn it until I was in my deathbed. And the other one goes, oh, I'm here to learn compassion, or I'm here, you know, to learn how to be a good parent. And the other one is, I'm here to learn how, you know, unconditional love. And so they start making agreements with each other. And they're like, I love you so much that I'm going to be, you know, the mother that abuses you so that you could learn forgiveness. And I'm going to be, you know, the child that runs away so that you could learn unconditional love. And so they make these agreements with each other that this is how I'm going to help you learn your lesson, because I love you that much. This is your mission to learn that in this life. And I'm going to be part of that. So then they all get on the bus, and of course they take the forgiveness pill, because they're forgetting the forgetting pill, because, you know, you can't be like abusing somebody and winking like, remember we made this deal, you know, because then you won't learn your lesson, right? So
it's interesting. I actually my last medicine experience was very similar to that. It was kind of at the end of a healing process that I've been in. And there's a particular wounder, you know, and kind of knowing that I was at the end and so much light. And then it was so funny. It was kind of like shaking the person's hand, giving them a big hug, honestly, in the journey. And it was like, thank you so much for what I learned through you was. And I think I'm curious what you feel like your greatest, what are you here to learn? Do you know?
I think unconditional love, actually.
Yeah.
I think unconditional love, and it's, you know, and it, you know, the polarity that we were talking about earlier applies here, because when people hear that story, sometimes they can interpret it as if saying, well, does that excuse the behavior?
Right. Exactly.
And it doesn't. And
No.
it's the behavior, we're not condoning what anybody did, and we're also not saying that it doesn't hurt like heck.
No.
And that it didn't cause pain. And we also learned something like, how do we hold all of those at the same time? And yes, people get to take responsibility for their actions, and people get to make repairs. And we also learned a lot. And I've gone through some really difficult things, actually, through my ayahuasca experience, of attachment and deep, deep pain, and learning a lot. And my teacher in that is still a good friend of mine. I learned so much from them. And it was tough, because we want to exile the people that hurt us, because it's natural, right? Why wouldn't you? But when you have this understanding that, you know, people really are here to teach us something. They could be our teachers or our companions. And our teachers are those very difficult relationships sometimes. And our companions are the ones that are our champions. They're rooting us like, yes, you can do this. Yes.
I think in a lot of ways, too, I think unconditional love is probably a universal lesson that we're all here to learn. I also think in these times, and I think it's been one of the things I've felt like is one of my lessons through this all, is right use of power. And the balancing of, you know, I know a lot of it's called the masculine and the feminine, the yin and the yang. I would say the experience of being the disempowered feminine and learning through challenges to become the empowered feminine. And to, I think in some of the ways that you learn that is through the toxic masculine, and to know what the right use of power is, and what love really is, and what healthy attachment styles are, and forgiveness and all of it. And also I had my soul, what's it called? My true will done. And that's kind of like astrology. And what I was told that my lesson here is to, in deep relationship, and it's so interesting because you can feel, for you, this might be so simple, but from what I came from and my wounds and maybe my ancestry, this is like the hardest thing for me. So one of the things that I learned, that one of my deep things to learn here, is sovereignty within deep relationship through authentic through authentic communication. And so if you are taught, like, don't really talk about what's true, suppress those aspects of yourself. So when suddenly you come up against a time where you're supposed to express what's true for you, it's like the most difficult thing in the world to do. So I think for me, that's been one of my lessons that medicine has showed me, that's you have to be in truth in everything, and you have to be able to speak it.
Yeah, that's probably been a very big, everything that you just said has been big for me too. Everything. I mean, the right use of power is a very interesting one, because I have learned how we can cause harm by not recognizing our power. And that was a huge lesson for me. When we minimize our power, where we have power, we can cause a lot of harm. And, we could spend another hour talking about that one, just that one. But one of my missions actually in this life, I think, is helping decolonize our minds, our bodies, our spirits. And
we're all wounded by that.
We're all wounded by it. And as a Mexican person, I have Indigenous blood. And I also have white blood. I have Spanish blood. And so I feel in my DNA, I have the blood of the colonizer and I have the blood of the colonized. And that is a message that I got very strongly actually in Machu Picchu. I was there with a couple of friends and we were doing Wachuma. And I all of a sudden felt it within myself, like, oh, wow, I am a bridge between the colonizer and the colonized. And I have to bring a lot of love and compassion to the colonizer part of me. And
so
a lot of
would
love.
You say to somebody who is serving medicine who doesn't come from your lineage? What are your feelings on that for people like, we all have medicine within our lineage, whether it's mushrooms from the, what are your feelings and what are your thoughts? How do you, even in the space of medicine space, what is your message to decolonize medicine space?
We do all come from Indigenous somewhere, and some people are way farther from the roots than I am. Or, and I am far too from other people that are a lot closer, right? Like we're all on that spectrum. Decolonizing medicine space, I think, has to do with what you were talking about a little earlier, as far as like really finding our own truth. And like the true expression of ourselves, and really getting in touch with the interjects from society, the interjects from our family, from church, from, all of these messages that we've been given that are really not truly who we are, that actually disconnect us from nature. And I have found it really important for myself to deepen my connection with my own roots. I do find that in a lot of medicine spaces, people feel such love and groundedness in the medicine space, especially if it's offered by an Indigenous person who is a lot closer to their roots. And we're all looking for that groundedness and connection to the earth. So people get very attracted to it, like magnetically attracted. And then we may start saying some of the words that they're saying, or we may take up some of their culture, and then saying those things without really being rooted in that culture. So that's where cultural appropriation starts, to happen in the space, which can be very harmful then, because then we're colonizing, so what I'm learning, I have a good friend here in town that is teaching me a lot about how to reconnect with, really reconnect with my roots. I'm about to go to Argentina next week, and I'm studying Wachuma, and I'm studying with a teacher who's from the Andes, and I was telling him how connected I am to that culture, and they said, yeah, that's great, and make sure that you don't forgo connecting with the wisdom of your own people, and find the rootedness there. And then it's okay to learn, of course, from other cultures and integrate the wisdom from other cultures, because at the end of the day, the wisdom is pretty much the same in, the universal wisdom is the universal wisdom, and it comes in different languages and in different forms. But rooting ourselves, finding ourselves. And they were telling me that they have a lot of clients that have actually gone to Europe and connected with some of their culture and the healing that comes from that. So I'm starting to see that too.
Yeah.
That, if we take a minute to go, so where are my roots from, and how
I've just started to do that. And there are some medicine women that are in front of me who have studied kind of like the Celtic roots, the Irish medicine women, and they were very rooted in mushrooms, and so that's been an interesting process. And even in my own process of I remember even sage, for example, being purified by sage, and thinking I don't know if that's from my culture, I don't know. And before I would do that, maybe I should even do a dieta with sage and see if this subtle plant medicines, speaks to me. And it is an interesting, what's the word? I want to be so careful of my role in it. I want to know more, and to always do this in a way that is having reverence not only to the medicine, but the peoples that have kept these medicines alive on this planet for centuries, who have held the wisdom of these medicines, and to do that in a way that honors everybody. But I think it's interesting you say that, because for me it is going back to where did I come from, and what you said, the wisdom is the same, and ultimately we all are the same.
Right. It's like a spiral, right?
It's a spiral.
Where in this spiral are we talking? And at the top, yes, we are all one. But at the bottom, at some point in the spiral, we chose to come into this with these different roots in this different tribes and from different places that have its own roots and its own wisdom and its own cosmology.
Yes.
So it is important to look at that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah. I love the healing with copal. When I smell copal, it's like, I feel like home. And it's like, oh yeah, of course. There's copal in the Day of the Dead altars in Mexico. I grew up with that smell, right? So for me, bringing copal into ceremony has that remembrance of the altars in Mexico with beautiful flowers and ceremony.
So beautiful. Well, I want to definitely invite you to come back, because there's always more to talk about after your trip, and to do all the work that you're doing and the wisdom that you're bringing in the world. And yeah, it's just beautiful work. Is there anything else you'd want to share?
Oh, there's so much.
Isn't there? I was thinking of so many things we didn't even get to.
Right.
Practices.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, as far as practices, I'll just mention that I sit with Hape, which is from the jungle in Brazil. In the mornings, I sit with Hape outside and I do my meditation, and that's one of my practices to ground myself and to be with nature. And in the evening, after I do a deep dive with a client, I'll sit with Hape again before I go to bed to clear myself. So that's just one practice. I think that, if I was to just say one thing to people is to be really gentle with ourselves, even as we decolonize ourselves. Even, the guilt of it all doesn't really heal, but just to be really gentle as we realize that we've been sold a lot of stories. We've been given a lot of messages about who we are and who we're not. And as we take those layers off, to be really gentle with ourselves and to really love ourselves through the healing process, it is the best way. We don't have to go anywhere fast, to be gentle through it and really love up all those parts that show up. All those little exiles and the little protectors and the little parts of ourselves, the managers, and, let's love them up.
They're all so perfect for the time that
precious.
What they did. Like, oh my God. Yeah, I think of, it's interesting because I think one of the hardest parts to go into in its texture is shame. And also maybe like a feeling of annihilation, and maybe that goes back to our own survival mechanisms as human beings in nature. I'm not sure, but shame is one of those ones that I think texturally we all carry in some way. But, it's such a beautiful thing to even go into that, to know it well, to feel it, to honor it, all those parts, to love them and to have compassion for that. It really is the self-love.
Yeah. And I just finished a book yesterday that breaks down shame into little pieces, and it helped me understand it so much deeper. It's called Beyond Harm. And fascinating book. At the beginning, the first couple of pages, I was like, I know this stuff. And then it got deeper and deeper and deeper into breaking down shame, because something happened where I thought, I don't feel shame around that. And it was like, when I started reading that book, it's like, it goes deeper and
layers
deeper.
And layers.
Layers.
It's funny. My kids say all the time now, they quote me as soon as they ask something like, how was that ceremony or how was that? Before I even open my mouth, they go, let me guess, layers and layers. Because I've said it so many times. It's like, I can't even describe. Well, I hope to sit with you again someday and to connect in this beautiful space again and again. And I'd love to have you back on any topic that you feel called to share about.
Thank you. That would be lovely. Yeah. Thank you so much for the beautiful work you're doing. I've been listening to your podcast and I'm like, oh my God, all these people that she has on are so inspiring. And I learned so much. Beautiful work.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Yes. And I love it when you say, Mother Earth is psychedelic. I love it.
She is, isn't she?
She is amazing. Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much for your beautiful work.
Yeah. Thank you.